Chris Watts, a seemingly ordinary family man, brutally murdered his pregnant wife, Shanann, and their two daughters, Bella and Celeste. Welcome to the first episode of Twisted Sister Mysteries. I'm Michaela.
And I'm Caitlin, and we're sisters who share a passion for learning about crime, cults, conspiracies, and other mysterious phenomena that pique our curiosity.
If you're listening and would like to see our faces, head on over to YouTube at Twisted Sisters Mysteries, where you can watch full episodes. Today we're exploring a gripping and tragic story. We'll be delving into the Watts murder case, a chilling and heart-wrenching story that shook the nation.
The Watts murder is a recent case that still lingers in our minds. But before we dive into the case, we'd like to give a warning for those of our viewers who might be sensitive to certain subjects.
This podcast contains themes of violence and murders towards both adult and child victims. If you feel that these themes are too much for you to handle and hear about right now, we suggest that you skip this episode, and we hope to see you in another episode.
We would also like to mention that this video is for educational purposes. The information that we're about to share is public information that we found on the internet and have compiled into this episode to share with you. We mean no harm or disrespect to any of the victims or their families, and have done our best to source the most accurate information possible to include in this episode.
That being said, let's get into the case and begin by giving a bit of background on Chris and Shanann Watts' relationship. Chris and Shanann Watts were seemingly the perfect all-American couple. The couple met in 2010 when Chris sent Shanann a friend request on Facebook. Shanann, having recently gone through a divorce, was not looking for a relationship at the time, but she figured there was no harm in accepting the friend request. Not long after this, the two ended up meeting in person and found that they had an instant connection.
The couple ended up getting married and having a fairy tale wedding 2 years later on November 3rd, 2012 in Charlotte, North Carolina. The next year, in 2013, the couple moved from Charlotte to Frederick, Colorado to start a new chapter in their lives. 2013 not only brought them to a new home in a new state, but also brought them their first daughter, Bella, born on December 17, 2013.
In January of 2015, Chris started a new position at Anadarko Petroleum Company, where he worked as an oil field operator. Later on that year, on July 17th, Shanann and Chris welcomed their second child, a daughter named Celeste.
Although their friends and family thought the couple had a happy and healthy relationship, the two actually had many stressors that were certainly taking the toll on their relationship.
Due to a number of expenses, including accumulating medical bills caused by a number of health issues that both Shanann and their first daughter were experiencing, the couple's combined income of $90,000 wasn't enough to cover all of their bills. They were having a very difficult time, and this eventually led to the couple filing for bankruptcy in 2015 after accumulating approximately $70,000 in debt.
In 2016, Shanann started a career with a multi-level marketing company called Lavelle, where she quickly rose through the ranks and became quite successful, allegedly making about $80,000 a year. With her career came many opportunities for traveling to conferences and company events where she began making friends within her company, including one of her best friends, Nicole Atkinson, who she ended up attending many of these events with.
In 2018, Shanann surprised her husband with the news that she was pregnant with their third child. She shared a video on social media of this pregnancy announcement, and Chris seemed happy to learn the news.
We did it again. I like that shirt. Really?
Really?
That's awesome. So pink means...
That's just the test.
I know. It just says the pink is going to be girls.
I don't know. Just the test.
That's awesome. Guess when you want to, it happens.
On August 13th of 2018, Shanann got home in the early hours from one of her business trips. Her friend Nicole Atkinson dropped her home at her residence in Frederick at 1:48 a.m. The next day, Nicole started growing concerned when she was unable to reach Shanann on her mobile phone. Knowing that Shanann had a doctor's appointment that day concerning her pregnancy, Nicole decided to call the clinic when she learned that Shanann had not made it to her appointment that day.
Although they had some struggles in their relationship, the couple had a seemingly perfect life, with 2 beautiful children who adored them, and a third on the way, a big house, and careers that seemed to be taking off. One might wonder what more the couple could want, but unbeknownst to Shanann, her husband was keeping a big secret from her.
In 2018, Chris had begun a relationship with one of his co-workers at Anadarko. Chris made the first move in early of June in that year when he struck up a conversation with Nicole Kessinger.
Their physical relationship began in early July of 2018, and Chris assured Nicole that he and Shanann were in the process of getting a divorce, which was not true. Later on that month, Shanann and their daughters took a trip back to North Carolina to visit family, a trip that Chris was due to join them on later on. But before he left to meet his family on vacation, he took the opportunity to spend the month wining and dining his new mistress while his wife was away with their children.
Despite his marriage, it seems Chris was beginning to become enamored with his mistress. Computer evidence would later show that he was making Google searches like marrying your mistress, and Nicole had conducted lengthy searches for wedding dresses. The case unfolded with a missing persons report filed by Shanann's friend, and the investigation quickly took a dark turn when the seemingly loving husband and doting father Chris Watts became the prime suspect.
Hey guys, it's Shanann and Bella.
Chris Watts presented himself as a loving husband and father, but as the investigation unfolded, it was revealed that there were deep-seated issues within the family. In addition to their previously mentioned financial problems, the couple have been struggling with their marriage for some time.
Shanann had confided in several friends about the lack of intimacy and the poor communication in their relationship, but could never have imagined that Chris was having an affair. It's difficult to say whether it was the tension in their marriage, the secret relationship, or some other aspect that led to the tragic outcome of the morning of August 13th.
On the morning of August 13th, the small town of Frederick, Colorado, was rocked by a devastating crime. Chris Watts, a seemingly ordinary family man, brutally murdered his pregnant wife, Shanann, and their 2 daughters, Bella and Celeste.
In the midst of a heated argument between the couple, Chris snapped and brutally strangled his wife with his own 2 hands. Devastatingly, their 4-year-old daughter witnessed Chris dragging her mother's body down the stairs and into his truck. Chris then proceeded to load his 2 daughters into the vehicle and drive them to a job site owned by his employer, where he then smothered both of his young daughters and disposed of their bodies in oil tanks located on the site.
Chris then buried his wife in a shallow grave nearby and left the site, returning to their Frederick home. Later on that morning, Chris went to work and somehow carried on with his regular routine as if it was just any other day. Chris received several calls throughout the day from Shanann's friend Nicole questioning her whereabouts, and Chris's response was vague. He plainly told her that Shanann and the girls had left early that morning for a play date.
Nicole had serious suspicions that this was not true, as she knew that Shanann had a doctor's appointment that day, which is when she proceeded to call the clinic and learn that Shanann hadn't shown up for her appointment. Nicole continues to call Chris, and he continued to give her vague responses. This prompted Nicole to drive over to the couple's home in hopes that she would find Shanann there, but when Nicole couldn't enter the house with the code that Shanann had previously given her, she decided she would call local law enforcement to come to the house to perform a wellness check.
When the police entered the home, they found that Shanann's phone, purse, and car keys were all still in the home, but Shanann and the girls were nowhere to be found. These events prompted Nicole to file a missing persons report, and the investigation for Shanann and her daughters began. Due to his suspicious nature, Chris quickly became the prime suspect.
It's chilling how Chris initially denied any involvement and was interviewed on national television pleading for the safe return of his family. The deception from this man was calculated and convincing, considering the horrific acts he had committed just days before this interview.
After a 2-day interrogation, details began becoming more clear, and through the unraveling of his lies and the discovery of the bodies, evidence continued to point in Chris's direction. Thinking that he had been caught, Chris finally admitted to the police that he had killed his wife, but in order to sway some of the blame from himself, he told the investigators that it was only after he witnessed Shanann kill their 2 daughters that he snapped and proceeded to take his wife's life as well.
Eventually, after admitting his full guilt to his father, and being met with increasing pressure from investigators, the public, and the media, Chris finally admitted his full guilt and was charged with the murder of his wife and his 3- and 4-year-old daughter.
Look at mommy. You're so cute, Bella.
The trial was intense, with Chris Watts eventually pleading guilty to multiple charges, including first-degree murder. The court proceedings shed light on the disturbing details of the crime and the motivations behind it. On November 19th, Chris is sentenced to life imprisonment by Judge Marcelo Kopkow, who called the murder spree perhaps the most inhumane and vicious crime I have ever handled out of the thousands of cases I have seen. He issued 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole, including 48 years for the unlawful termination of Shanann's pregnancy and 36 years for disposing of the bodies of his family.
Also on this day, Shanann's parents filed for wrongful death against Chris. Chris is ordered to pay Shanann's parents $6 million, which will grow with 8% interest. While they likely won't see any money, it prevents Chris from profiting from the murders in any way. Now, as we explore the aftermath of the Watts case, it's important to address its impact on the public perception of family-related crimes.
Absolutely. As we wrap up today's episode, we encourage our listeners to reflect on the Watts case and the broader implications it holds for our understanding of family dynamics and the fragility of human relationships.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Twisted Sister Mysteries. If you have thoughts on the Watts case or suggestions for future episodes, reach out to us on Instagram at Twisted Sisters Mysteries. Until next time, stay safe and curious.